Mr. Skerry was no ordinary storyteller. His voice, like a rusty knife, bit into the broadcast every Friday at midnight. The radio show, Real Nightmares, has long become a cult for those obsessed with genuine horror. He didn't invent plots, he collected them. Letters from listeners, old newspaper clippings, audio cassettes with confessions that someone threw into his mailbox. All of this became the fuel for his stories. But no one knew that Mr. Skerry himself was a former journalist whose career had been burned out by an investigation into a sect that turned people into obedient slaves through torture and neuro-linguistic programming. He survived by a miracle, but his left hand, mutilated by a blowtorch, remained forever hidden under a black glove. One day, a box was brought to him. Inside there are a dozen films marked Experiment Number 13. On the first recording, filled with crackles, a man's voice breaks into a scream. They make them forget. They're erasing it. It's like the brain is a sponge. Followed by children's laughter, unnatural, mechanical, as if recorded on a broken toy. Mr. Skerry knew it wasn't a prank. He had seen this kind of thing before. Claire didn't want to go to an abandoned farm. But her brother, Jacob, disappeared there 3 days ago, leaving only a broken phone and a piece of paper with coordinates in the trailer. She found the bunker by accident, an iron door under a pile of planks, disguised as an old well. It smelled of formalin and rotten apples. The walls were covered with scratches, dates, names, crooked lines, as if someone was trying to draw a map of the maze. With a flashlight in her trembling hand, Claire went downstairs. The metal steps rang under his boots. Downstairs is a room lined with white tiles, like in a morgue. Syringes, vials of pink liquid, and a notebook were scattered on the table. The pages were filled with a single word, written in different handwriting: I agree. The last entry is in a child's pencil: Mom said I have to obey. But the uncle in the mask smells like a hospital. Claire didn't hear the door close. The lights went out. A hiss filled the air, and a pink mist crept across the floor. She rushed to the vent, but the grate wouldn't budge. A speaker clicked somewhere: Welcome to correction. Stage 1, erasing fear. Shadows crawled out of the corners, figures in transparent suits and masks with smiling mouths. They were not carrying knives, but long needles and devices similar to portable EEGs. We won't hurt you, a female voice said. We will make you better. Claire punched the first one in the throat, but immediately felt a stab in the neck. The muscles failed. She was dragged through a hallway where photographs of children, adults, and the elderly hung on the walls. All with the same empty eyes. The last picture made her scream. Jacob was smiling at the camera, holding a sign: Volunteer number 42. Full rehabilitation. Your brother has become part of the family, someone whispered in her ear. You'll learn to be happy too. Mr. Skerry was sitting in his studio, littered with tapes and folders marked off the air. Claire's notes, delivered by an anonymous courier, lay in front of him, a dictaphone with a cracked screen and an envelope covered with brown spots that looked like blood. He pressed play, and the girl's voice, interrupted by sobs, filled the room. They put something in the water, they make the children repeat the words. If you refuse, you disappear. Jacob. God, they broke him in a week. This was followed by sounds that made even Scar's back go cold: metallic screeching, the monotonous hum of instruments, screams, muffled as if underwater. And then, silence. He rewound the tape. At the end, barely audibly, the man said, "The Amethyst Protocol. Objects no longer distinguish truth from suggestion." Mr. Skerry recognized the voice that he was driving along the highway, holding a pistol with traumatic cartridges in his pocket. Old habits. The coordinates led him to a dilapidated building of a former psychiatric clinic. The sign at the entrance also read, Family Therapy Center. Inside there is a smell of mold and chemicals. The walls were covered with graffiti, hundreds of names written in marker, and the number 13 in a red circle. In the director's office, he found a safe that had been hacked decades ago. Inside there are folders with photos. Family portraits, parents, children, grandmothers. Everyone was smiling the same way, like mannequins. There are stamps on the back, successful integration. Below them are the lists, dosage, frequency of sessions, side effects. One document made him stop. Lotus series toxins suppress the amygdala responsible for fear. With regular use, they cause complete dependence on the opinion donor. Next to it are graphs showing how, after 7 injections, 92% of the subjects signed any papers, even consent to organ rejection. Mr. Skerry took out a flashlight. There was a door behind the safe. The basement turned out to be a laboratory. Vials of pink liquid, refrigerators with ampoules, electroencephalography machines, converted to something more sinister. There was a diary with notes on the table. Stage 3, Introduction to the Family. After 2 weeks of treatment, the mother herself brings the child to the procedures. It is important to isolate them from schools, churches, and doctors. Control through fear of illness. Object number 17 tried to resist. A double dose was administered. After 3 hours, he started kissing the operator's hands. Side effect, incontinence, aphasia. It's been disposed of. Suddenly the light flickered. Mr. Skerry turned around. A woman in a white coat stood on the threshold. Her face was covered with a surgical mask, but he recognized the voice from the tape. "You don't know how to give up, do you?" She took out a syringe with a cloudy liquid. "We didn't want to involve you again. After you burned down our branch in '98. He retreated to the wall, groping for the light switch with his left hand. The glove slipped off, revealing the scars. "You." The woman froze. "You were supposed to die in that barn. Your favorite tactic saved me." He jerked the switch sharply. Darkness. Shot. The glass flasks broke. Fear is a great incentive to RUNDMR. Skerry opened the hard drive hidden behind a panel in the laboratory. The files were encrypted, but a series of dates, the 13th of each month, turned out to be the key. Inside, financial statements, fake quality certificates, and correspondence with the charity foundation, Bright Hearts. "Damn it," he hissed, comparing the documents. The foundation supplied free antidepressants to poor areas. But the instructions for the drugs read in small print: take daily, dissolve in a warm liquid. The attachments showed that each batch of tablets contained the toxin Lotus 7, which was activated when heated. Psychiatric supervisors on the ground convinced families that the medicine should be drunk with tea. Skerry found a video report. At boarding school, children drew identical symbols, spirals with a dot in the center. The teacher in the frame was smiling. After 3 months of taking them, they became so obedient. Claire didn't scream when the needle entered the vein for the 5th time. The pink liquid didn't burn anymore. My body was numb. She was transferred to the adaptation zone, a room with padded walls, where the same footage was broadcast around the clock on TV, happy families eating breakfast in unison. "You have to understand, we help people," said the voice from the speaker. "And Jacob?" "What is it?" she whispered. "Your brother. He's special." She was taken out into the hallway for a walk. The guard, whose face was hidden by a respirator, led her past the windows. She saw Jacob in one of the offices. He was sitting at his desk, studying graphs, and talking on the phone. "No, the party for the Rasvet Center is ready. Tell them to double the dose for teenagers." Claire rushed to the door, but the guard injected her with a sedative. Before consciousness drifted away, she heard her brother's voice. "I'm sorry, sis. But you came by yourself. So she's ready to be perfect." Details of the experiment. Lotus 7 causes a chemical dependence similar to heroin. Withdrawal symptoms manifest as panic attacks, which cause victims to beg for a cure. Families are recruited through crisis situations, layoffs, illnesses, debts. They are given sponsors from the foundation, who become their only support. Those who resist are declared mentally ill. The local media, bought by the sect, publish revealing articles with fake interviews of neighbors. Skerry quickly left the building, taking with him a hard drive and several folders with incriminating documents. The night was dark, the air smelled damp, and every step echoed hollowly in the corridors of the abandoned clinic. He knew that he couldn't stay here for long. The sect clearly hadn't given up their habits, and they could come for him at any minute. When he got to the car, he threw the loot into the passenger seat and started the engine. Squinting in the rear-view mirror, he caught his reflection, tired, scarred by years of fear and struggle. He had already been a part of this war once, but then he had lost. Now he had a chance to finish what he had started. Claire opened her eyes in the dark. My head was buzzing, my muscles ached, and my lips were dry, as if after a long binge. It took her a moment to realize where she was. The room looked like a hospital ward, a metal cot, empty walls, and the barely audible hum of ventilation. There was a screen in the corner, but it wasn't on yet. There was a glass of water and 2 white pills on the table next to it. Drink up. This will help, a voice came from somewhere above. She looked up at the speaker in the corner. You're disoriented, that's okay. You've been through a lot of stress, Claire. Drink some water and you'll feel better. She didn't touch the glass. You don't have to be afraid. We take care of you here. Everything we do is for your own good. Claire was silent. We understand that it's difficult for you. Jacob didn't believe it at first either. But then he realized that this was the only way to real freedom. At the mention of her brother, something inside her turned over. What did you do to him? Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in days. He found his calling. He saw the truth. As you will see. The screen blinked and a video appeared on it. A family of 4, a mother, father and 2 children, were sitting at the dining table. Everyone was smiling. But the smiles were too identical. Their movements were as precise as dolls. They ate in perfect rhythm, as if they were following an imperceptible command. They're happy. They're healthy. They don't know fear, anxiety, or pain. They're free. Claire clenched her fists. This is not freedom. This. You don't understand yet. But you'll understand. Everyone understands. Sooner or later. The door opened. A man in a white coat entered. Good morning, Claire. We need to run some tests. She did not resist when she was lifted from the bed. But a plan was already forming in her mind. Mr. Skerry was sitting in his apartment, staring at his laptop screen. He found something really scary in the documents. The Bright Hearts Foundation wasn't just distributing drugs. He has funded dozens of private clinics and rehabilitation centers across the country. In all these places, the same program was used: the gradual psychological withdrawal of patients, the introduction of addiction, the erasure of personality traits. But there was one more detail. Among the lists of successfully rehabilitated, he found one familiar name. Claire Hayes. Status: integration is completed. Stage 2. Skerry clenched his fists. They haven't completely broken it yet. So he still has time. He ran an old encryption program and sent copies of the documents to 3 of his contacts, journalists he had once trusted. If something happens, the truth will come out. And then he picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. The beeps went on endlessly. Then a voice rang out. You know you're going to get killed if you keep digging, right? I'm already dead, Skerry replied. Where are they keeping her? There was a pause on the line. You don't just want to know, do you? You want to get her out. Damn it, tell me. Garden, 12 branch. The security is serious. Cameras, security passes, self-contained doors. If you climb, you won't come out alive. Then I'll have to make them open the door for me themselves. He hung up the phone. Mr. Skerry checked the clip, and there was a full magazine. In his pocket were 2 chloral hydrate capsules, a quick way to put the guards to sleep. He was working alone, and that was the only option. If he breaks in with a gun, he'll kill 2 of them, and the other 3 will set off an alarm. And if he goes unarmed, they'll just break him. The Garden, 12 branch was located in the former sanatorium building. High walls, cameras on every corner. Login using biometrics. If he wants to get inside, he needs to be taken there. He got into the rented van and opened his laptop. The perimeter cameras are connected to the cloud. A small mistake in the protocols, and he had access. He saw the guards patrolling the area. There were 2 men standing at the front entrance, armed with tasers and batons. There were no guns, it was easier to control patients that way. There are at least 4 people inside. He took a deep breath. It's time. Claire felt her body weaken. She was kept here for more than a week. Scheduled meals, metered injections, conversations that became softer and calmer every day. She wasn't broken. But she felt like the system was trying to bend her. She was taken out for examination again today. The room was white and empty. There was a monitor on the wall showing her heart rate. There was a tray of food on the table. Boiled chicken, some rice, a glass of juice. She looked at him, but she didn't eat. You have to eat, Claire. It is important. The doctor was sitting opposite. Food is a concern. We can't take care of you if you don't take care of yourself. Where's my brother? He went through the process. He's happy. We're not forcing you, Claire. All you have to do is accept help. She looked at him. You're lying. The doctor sighed and nodded to someone outside the door. 2 orderlies entered, their faces devoid of emotion. If you don't want to volunteer, we'll have to help you. They grabbed her by the arms. She jerked, but there was almost no strength left. One of the paramedics unclenched her jaw, the other took a syringe. Just a little bit. Just to make the process easier. The needle entered the neck, and the world began to swim. But before her eyes closed, she heard a crash. Loud as a hammer striking metal. Skerry acted quickly. A smoke bomb in the ventilation, the siren beeped, calling the guards to the main corridor. The doors locked automatically, but he had already found a weak spot in the system. The left entrance to the lower level. He tore off the grate and climbed inside. A narrow, dirty tunnel led to the basement. Dark walls, concrete floor, the smell of bleach. The light was blinking. There was a cage on the right. There were people inside. Dirty, in rags, with empty eyes. Some were trembling, others were just staring into space. He came closer. A woman in her 40s looked up. You're not one of them. No, he whispered. Then kill us. He clenched his fists. No. This is not the end of them. He looked at the castle. Standard electronic. He knew he only had a few minutes. But he also knew that Claire was here. And he won't leave without her. Claire was awakened by a crash. Everything was blurry, but consciousness returned faster than expected. She felt that her hands were not tied. Mistake. She realized that this was her only chance. The orderly turned away, checking the monitor. She jerked around, grabbed a fork from the tray, and stabbed it into his neck. He screamed, and blood splattered on her robe. The second orderly grabbed her by the hair, but she was already moving. Knee in the groin, elbow in the throat. He coughed, clutching at his throat, and she lifted the stool and slammed it into his head. A dull crunch. He fell without moving. She was breathing heavily, looking at their bodies. But there was no time. She took the robe off one of them and pulled it on. And she went out into the corridor. Skerry opened the lock. "Go ahead." Quickly. The woman got out first. The others hesitated. "The exit is on the north side. Stick to the shadows." They didn't respond, but he could see that some of them were already moving. He turned around. And he saw her. Claire was standing at the end of the hallway. The eyes are dilated. There's a bloody knife in his hands. They looked at each other. "We're leaving," he said. She nodded. "It's time to end this shit." Skerry took a step towards Claire, checking her condition. She looked pale but confident. There was no panic or weakness on her face. Just clenched fists and a frantic breathing rhythm. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded. "Then let's get out." The smell of blood and smoke filled the corridors. The siren wailed again, but this time its tone changed. "The automatic lock is activated." "Shit," he said. He knew they had no more than 5 minutes left before reinforcements would rush in. "We have to move faster," he said, pointing to the stairs on the left. Claire took a step forward, but suddenly froze. She looked away. There, in one of the open rooms, a boy was lying on a bed. He couldn't have been more than 7. Thin body, sunken cheeks, skin almost white. His eyes opened, but he didn't move. "Claire, let's go." But she was already walking towards him. Skerry clenched his jaw. That was her limit. She couldn't just leave. She put her hand on his shoulder. "Baby?" The boy's eyes twitched. "Help me." Her heart sank. "We'll get you out." She picked him up in her arms. The body was light, almost weightless. Skerry swore. Now it was even more difficult. But he didn't say a word. They ran out into the hallway. The siren muffled his footsteps, but he knew the guards were on their way. 3 minutes. "The door is on the right," he said. Claire walked quickly, clutching the baby tightly. Skerry peered around the corner. 2 of them. Automatic batons, bulletproof vests. He took a deep breath. And he fired. The first bullet hit the left guard in the neck, the second in the temple of the other. They fell before they even realized what had happened. "Come on." They crossed the hall and jumped out into a side corridor. The door to the outside was right in front of them. But Skerry stopped. Claire felt his hand grab her shoulder. "What?" "Cameras. They already know where we are. If we go out now, we'll be shot like dogs." He looked around. To the left was the security control panel. He took a few quick steps and pulled out a small transmitter from his pocket. Claire realized what he was going to do. "Will you hack into their system?" "No," he said, attaching the device to the panel. "I'll burn it." As soon as he activated the transmitter, the wires closed inside. The hallway lit up with a flash for a second, and the light flickered. And then the whole complex was plunged into darkness. Now. They rushed to the exit. The doors were electronic, and now their locks were disabled. Skerry slammed his shoulder into the door, which gave way. The cold night air hit my face. Claire ran out after him, holding the boy in her arms. They were free. But that wasn't all. There were screams behind them. They turned around. Those whom Skerry had freed were running out of the building. The woman he saw first was leading the others. They didn't run. They were walking. Calmly. Purposefully. Like an army. Claire felt her body tense up. They are. Are they following us? Skerry looked at them. And he nodded. They want to finish what they started. Claire felt a strange tension in the air. These people. They no longer looked like victims. Their faces were blank. They went outside and stopped, surrounding Skerry and Claire with the boy. What's going on? Her voice was trembling. Skerry tightened his grip on the gun. I do not know. The woman who was walking in front looked directly at them. And she said, "We can't leave." Claire blinked uncomprehendingly. What? You think you saved us, but you just let us out. She took a step forward. And now you have to understand, not everything that looks like a prison is a prison. Claire felt her body go cold. She looked at the boy in her arms. He wasn't so weak anymore. His fingers tightened convulsively on her clothes. His lips twitched. And he smiled. Thanks for helping us out. Claire understood. But it was too late. They all rushed at them at the same time. The darkness closed in. 3 weeks later, a terrible tragedy was reported on the news. The closed medical laboratory was destroyed, the staff is dead. And dozens of patients who were kept inside disappeared. So far, no one has found them. But every night in different parts of the city, people disappeared without a trace. And surveillance cameras sometimes recorded something. A group of people moving in the dark. Calmly. Purposefully. Like an army.